We had not even finished choosing my grandmother's funeral flowers when my uncle tried to sell her diner. He did it in the back office with a developer brochure spread over the same desk where my grandmother used to count cash at closing. The coffee in her chipped green mug was still there from the morning she collapsed. Her reading glasses were folded beside the register reports, and Uncle Victor was already tapping a glossy site rendering with one thick finger, talking about demolition timelines like grief was just another utility bill. "We need to move fast," he said. "Buyers get nervous when families drag out probate." My cousin Paige stood beside him in a cream blazer that cost more than my monthly car payment, nodding like this was all very mature and efficient. Then Victor looked at me and slid a dented tin box across the desk. "Your grandmother wanted you to have the sentimental things," he said. "Recipes, postcards, her little keepsakes. The real business side needs adults. The real business side." My grandmother Rosa had owned Mesa Luna Diner for 32 years. I had worked there since I was 14. I knew the vendor codes, the grease trap schedule, the payroll quirks, the pie inventory rhythm, before holiday weekends, and every county permit renewal date. Victor had not worked a real shift there in 7 years. Paige used the place for curated social media photos and free brunches with people who tipped in exposure. But the second my grandmother died, they were suddenly the adults. I looked down at the tin box. It was the old recipe safe from the pie shelf. Flaking yellow paint, one loose hinge, and a faded red sticker on the side that said cinnamon. My grandmother kept index cards in it for fruit fillings, soup bases, and emergency phone numbers from the days before everyone stored their life in a glowing rectangle. Paige smiled the way people do when they think they are being generous. "Grandma knew you were the sentimental one," she said. That was the first lie. My grandmother never used sentimental as an insult. Paige did. I lifted the box and felt something shift inside that did not sound like recipe cards. Not paper. Metal. Then Victor pushed a stapled packet toward me. "This is just a family acknowledgement," he said. "Nothing complicated. It says you understand the diner will be sold as part of estate management and that you will remove any personal items from the apartment upstairs by Sunday." Apartment upstairs. I had lived there the last year to help my grandmother after her second surgery. I handled the books at night inventory on Tuesdays, and the early morning prep whenever her arthritis hit too hard. Victor called it helping out when he wanted free labor and temporary occupancy, when he wanted to remind me nothing was mine. I did not touch the packet. The dining room outside was still full of condolence casseroles and folded chairs from the church group. Someone was wiping down the pie case even though there would be no service that day. Through the office door I could hear one of the waitresses crying softly in the kitchen. And my uncle was trying to turn my grandmother's life into a signature before the flowers had even been ordered. That was when I noticed the wall behind him. The framed parcel map was gone. It had hung there for as long as I could remember. A county survey map of the diner lot, the gravel side parking, the back service strip, and the little triangle of herb garden. My grandmother grew behind the dumpster enclosure because she did not trust dried rosemary from suppliers. She loved that map because she said land told the truth longer than people did. Now it was gone. I looked at the developer brochure. The glossy rendering showed the diner site replaced by a sleek drive-through coffee chain with compact parking and a landscaped patio. Pretty. Efficient. Completely wrong for the footprint I knew by heart. Not impossible. Just wrong. Victor mistook my silence for surrender. "You do not need to make this harder than it already is," he said. "Your grandmother trusted me to handle practical matters." "No, she did not," I said. Paige let out a small breath through her nose. "Please," she said. "We are all devastated." That was the second lie. Devastated people do not lead with sale packets. I finally picked up the family acknowledgement and glanced over the first page. Temporary administrative cooperation. Non-interference. Personal property removal. Consent to pre-marketing consultation. The language was smooth enough for a family ambush and sloppy enough for a future lawsuit. I set it back down. "I need time," I said. Victor spread his hands, already annoyed. Time is exactly what we do not have. The thing about people like my uncle is that they think urgency makes them look competent. They do not realize it also makes them look guilty. I picked up the yellow tin box and stood. "Then I guess you should not have brought me paperwork before lunch," I said. Paige muttered something about drama under her breath as I walked out of the office. I took the back stairs to the apartment and locked the door behind me. Then I set the tin on my bed, opened it, and found 3 recipe cards, 2 old church raffle tickets, a brass key, and a folded strip of adding machine paper with my grandmother's handwriting. "If Victor pushes the sale, pull the county packet before he measures anything." No greeting, no explanation, just instruction. I sat down slowly. That was the moment my grief changed shape. Not smaller, not lighter, sharper. Because until then, some part of me had still hoped this was just ugly timing. A family scrambling badly through shock. But my grandmother had expected this. She had seen Victor coming from farther away than I had. And if she left me a note inside the recipe box she knew he would hand me, then the trap had started before she died. I work for the Pima County Land Use Office. Not glamorous. Not heroic. Mostly zoning files, parcel records, easement research permit, cross-checks, and angry calls from people who think setbacks are personal attacks. But it teaches you something useful. Buildings lie. Brochures lie. Relatives lie. Recorded land documents usually do not. By 3 that afternoon, I was sitting at a public terminal in the county records building, still in my black dress, searching my grandmother's property history. Mesa Luna Diner looked simple from the street. One corner building, old neon sign, side lot, rear service lane. But the records were not simple. The diner building sat on parcel 12A. The gravel parking lot beside it was parcel 12B. The rear service strip with the grease trap access and utility corridor was parcel 12C. 3 separate legal descriptions. The reason the developer rendering looked wrong was because it had been prepared as if all 3 parcels traveled together automatically. They did not. Parcel 12A and 12C were still held by my grandmother's revocable trust. Parcel 12B. The gravel lot. Everybody treated like overflow. Nothing had been transferred 4 years earlier into a beneficiary deed structure, tied to a dormant file number I had never seen before. The beneficiary field was not public in the index image. Protected attachment. I requested the packet. 10 minutes later, when the clerk brought it over, my hands were completely steady. That scared me more than shaking would have. Inside was a recorded transfer instrument naming me as beneficiary of parcel 12B upon my grandmother's death, along with a handwritten memorandum from her attorney attached as reference, not legally operative but still filed in. Support. The side lot was mine. Not the building. Not the business accounts. The side lot. On paper it sounded small. Sentimental even. The kind of thing a family could sneer at while taking the real prize. Except parcel 12B was not just a gravel lot. It contained 21 of the diners. Code-required parking spaces. The stormwater compliance strip. And the only legal public ingress angle large enough for delivery trucks, once you accounted for the rear utility easement restrictions on Akirians. Parcel 12C. Without 12B, the building could not be sold or operated as represented in the brochure. At least not without redesign variances and a permitting mess expensive enough to kill a rush developer deal. I leaned back in the plastic chair and closed my eyes for a second. There it was. The shape of the trap. But a trap only matters if the other person keeps moving confidently toward it. So I did not call Victor. I did not confront Paige. I did not march back into the diner waving copies. I went home, printed everything, and waited. The visitation was that evening at St. Luke's Hall. My grandmother had fed half that congregation over the years, so the room smelled like perfume, starch, coffee, and restrained gossip. Victor stood near the photo board, shaking hands like a candidate. Paige floated in cream and gold, collecting sympathy in tasteful angles. I wore dark blue instead of black because my grandmother hated pure black on me. She said it flattened my face and my fighting spirit. Halfway through the evening, old Mrs. Alvarez from the bakery next door squeezed my hand and whispered that Victor had already asked if her dumpster agreement could be terminated quickly after sale. After sale. He was still moving. Good. Then my grandmother's attorney, Daniel Mercer, arrived late and looked irritated in the specific way older attorneys look when they have discovered someone is trying to improvise around paperwork they drafted themselves. That was interesting. Victor saw him too and immediately went pale around the mouth. I did not approach. I just watched. Daniel spoke to Victor for less than a minute, then glanced across the room at me. His expression changed from annoyance to recognition. He did not come over. He only gave a small nod, the kind people use when they know the real conversation should happen somewhere private. I met him at his office the next morning. He closed the door, sat down, and said the first honest thing anyone in the family had said since my grandmother died. Your uncle is moving too fast because he thinks speed will hide structure. I almost laughed. That sounds like her, I said. Daniel slid a folder across the desk. Your grandmother updated several things over the last 2 years. She expected resistance, he said carefully. Her instructions were that some documents would be delivered only if a forced sale was attempted within the first 90 days after her death. There it was again. Not just foresight. Countermeasure. He opened the folder. Inside were trust schedules, operating notes for the Diner LLC, and one brutal little amendment. If any managing heir attempted liquidation of the operating business within 90 days of Rosas' death, without unanimous beneficiary review of all attached real property interests, then all recipe and branding rights associated with Mesa Luna Diner would pass to me. People think recipes are sentiment. They are not. In a family restaurant with 30 years of local recognition, recipe rights and branding are the business. Daniel must have seen the realization hit my face because he nodded once. She believed your uncle would fixate on the building and cash flow, he said. She believed you would read the attachments. My grandmother had split the future in 2 pieces. Victor could posture around the building all he wanted, but if he rushed liquidation, he could lose parking, branding, and eventually operating viability. That was not revenge. That was architecture. I asked Daniel the only question that mattered. Did Victor know? He exhaled. He knows there are trust attachments he has not fully reviewed. He does not know the consequences yet. Perfect. Then I need him comfortable, I said. Daniel studied me for a long moment. Your grandmother was very specific that you would know what to do once you saw the map. I looked down at the parcel diagrams. She was right. Back at the diner, Victor had posted reduced hours and started using phrases like transition plan around the staff. Paige was staging photos in the dining room as if grief improved under filtered sunlight. I came in through the kitchen with a bakery box and the softest face I could manage. Victor instantly looked suspicious. "What is that?" he said. "Peace offering," I said. "I do not want us fighting in public. Grandma would hate that." Paige relaxed first. She always trusted surrender, because she confused it with weakness. "Good," she said. "Then maybe we can all be realistic." I nodded. "I know I cannot run the diner alone," I said. "I know you are trying to settle things. I just want to make sure I get the pieces Grandma meant for me, and that no one blames me later for delays." Victor leaned against the counter. "So, what are you asking?" I set the bakery box down and opened it. Not pastries, files, county parking diagrams, the parcel 12B copy, and a draft lot line note I had prepared. "The side gravel lot transfers to me," I said. "It is already in the beneficiary filing. I am not fighting that. In return, I will sign a limited non-objection letter confirming I will not challenge preliminary marketing of the diner building itself while estate review continues." Victor grabbed the document and scanned it. Paige frowned. "The parking lot." I shrugged. "It has Grandma's herb beds and the old sign base. You called me sentimental, remember? I would rather keep that than argue over stoves and booths. People hear what flatters them." Paige heard sentimental and stopped thinking. Victor heard no challenge and started calculating. What I did not say out loud was the most important part. My letter did not waive final rights. It only let him keep paying for a deal he did not actually control. Every day he pushed harder, the eventual collapse would cost him more face and more money. He handed the draft back. "The lot is basically useless without the building," he said. I tilted my head. "Then it should not be hard to let me keep it." Paige looked at Victor. "The buyer wants speed," she said quietly. "Exactly. Greed always rushes arithmetic." Victor called Carson Bell that afternoon, a real estate attorney he used whenever he wanted documents that looked cleaner than his intentions. By evening, I had a revised family letter in my inbox. It acknowledged my separate interest in parcel 12B, granted temporary access rights to the buyer for due diligence only, and stated that all other sale representations remained the responsibility of the seller side. I signed. Victor signed. Paige signed as witness. The trap closed one calm little inch at a time. 3 days later, the buyer team arrived for what Victor kept calling a final walkthrough. Not public, but not private either. Developer representative, surveyor, title officer, Carson Bell, Daniel Mercer, Victor, Paige, me. The surveyor was the first to look confused. He stood in the side lot squinting at his tablet, then at the cones someone had placed near the herb strip. "Your brochure footprint includes this parcel," he said to the developer rep. Victor cut in quickly. "It is all part of the diner site." I said nothing. The title officer, a woman named Erica, looked down at her file and frowned. "Not according to the beneficiary transfer packet and signed family acknowledgement executed this week," she said. "Parcel 12B is a separate beneficiary interest now vested in Miss Lena Morales." The developer rep turned slowly. "I am sorry, what?" Paige actually laughed once too sharp. "That lot is not the property," she said. "It is just parking." The surveyor looked at her like she had announced gravity was optional. "The site is parking, stormwater compliance, and setback viability," he said. "Without it, the current redevelopment concept does not fit code as shown." That was the first hit. Victor tried to recover. "We can work around that," he said. "Maybe," Erica replied. "But there is another issue." She opened the file and pulled out Daniel's trust notice packet. "The Mesa Luna branding rights and recipe schedule appear conditionally severable under the 90-day liquidation clause if the operating business is marketed for sale without complete beneficiary review of attached real property interests, based on the signed preliminary marketing actions and recorded notices that trigger may already have been activated." The room went so quiet I could hear the neon transformer buzz through the front window. Victor looked at Daniel. "What is she talking about?" Daniel did not soften it. "Your grandmother structured the estate so that if you attempted a rushed liquidation without proper review, Lena would receive the side parcel and the protected branding rights." Paige stared at me. "The recipes." "Not just recipes," Daniel said. "Trade name, menu formulas, house identity, and associated goodwill schedules." "This is insane," Victor snapped. "No," I said. It was not loud. "It did not need to be. You brought me a family acknowledgement before we picked funeral flowers," I said. "You changed the hours called buyers and tried to treat the diner like a building with cash drawers." "She knew you would." Victor looked like he wanted to shout me out of existence. But anger works best when facts are fuzzy, and by then, the facts were sitting in neat stacks on the counter. Paige tried a different angle. "Lena, come on. Do not do this. We can all work something out." "We can," I said. "You can stop pretending she left this simple." The developer rep stepped back from the table. "Our offer was based on clear site control and complete brand transfer," he said. "If neither exists, we are done." He was out the door before Victor found another sentence. Carson Bell began riffling through his own papers with the expression of a man realizing he had billed himself into embarrassment. Erica from Title was already making notes. The surveyor packed up his tablet. Daniel closed the folder and looked almost bored. And Victor. A system where his own impatience pushed the inheritance exactly where she wanted it to go. He turned to me with raw hate on his face. You planned this? I looked at the yellow recipe tin sitting near the register where I had set it that morning. No, I said. She did. That landed harder than anything else I could have said. Because it was true. I had not outsmarted my uncle from scratch. I had simply known how to read what my grandmother left behind, and known enough to let him keep walking. The sale died that afternoon. Over the next 2 weeks, several things happened very quickly. First, the trust positions were formally acknowledged. Parcel 12B vested to me cleanly. The liquidation trigger over the branding rights was upheld because Victor had already initiated pre-marketing and private sale conduct inside the 90-day restriction window. Second, the staff stopped answering to him and started asking me what would happen next. Third, Paige suddenly became fascinated by healing as a concept once money stopped moving in her direction. Victor left me 3 voicemails about family betrayal and legal technicalities, as if technicalities were not just facts rich people wanted renamed when they lost. I kept only one message, mostly because I wanted to remember the sound a bully makes when paperwork finally stops being abstract. The diner did not become easy after that. Inheritance never does. You do not get a clean life because the right packet emerges from the right file drawer. The freezer still rattled. The grout still needed replacing. We were short 2 servers and 1 decent dishwasher. Grief still hit me hardest around 4 in the afternoon because that was when my grandmother used to tie on her apron for the pie rush and tell me gossip from the breakfast crowd. But the future changed. Not into fantasy. Into mine. I reopened Mesa Luna 6 weeks later under the same name, the same neon sign, and a pared-down menu built from the original protected cards in the yellow tin. I kept the herb garden in the side lot and repainted the lines myself, one Sunday morning while the asphalt was still cool. Mrs. Alvarez from next door brought conchas. Daniel came by for coffee and called the biscuits legally compliant. That was the closest thing to praise he had probably given anyone in years. Paige moved to Scottsdale with a boyfriend who sold wellness mirrors. Victor tried launching a consulting business based on hospitality transitions, which felt like a cosmic joke too expensive to explain. The last thing of his eye removed from the diner was a cardboard rendering of the coffee chain he had wanted to replace us with. I found it under the back office desk while clearing old files. Sleek patio. Compact drive-through. Smiling fake people under perfect desert light. I folded it in half and slid it into recycling. My grandmother used to say there are 2 kinds of inheritance. The kind people expect, and the kind they reveal about themselves while chasing it. Victor thought inheritance meant arrival. He thought the right bloodline, plus a quick signature, plus my silence would hand him a building, a sale, and a future. What he actually inherited was exposure. Paige inherited the knowledge that curated sympathy does not change parcel maps, and I inherited exactly what Rosa intended. Not just a lot. Not just a menu. Not just the right to keep the sign lit. I inherited the mechanism. The understanding that if someone tries to turn your grief into a deadline, you do not race them. You hand them a little more rope and watch which document they rush past first. That was the part they never saw coming. Not because the trap was hidden, because they were too arrogant to believe the sentimental granddaughter knew where the real structure lived. They gave me the recipe box like it was a consolation prize. Inside was the key to the whole thing. By the time Victor realized the gravel lot was not just gravel, the recipes were not just recipes, and the waiting was not weakness, the diner was already gone from his hands in every way that mattered. He tried to sell the shell. I kept the soul. That was enough. On the first anniversary of my grandmother's death, I opened before sunrise and brewed coffee in her chipped green mug. Then I stood alone in the dining room, while the neon sign hummed awake in the front window. The tables were set. The pie case was full. The herb strip in the side lot had survived another desert summer. And the county parcel map, the one Victor took off the office wall, was framed again behind the register where everyone could see it. Land tells the truth longer than people do. She was right about that. She was right about a lot of things. Most of all, she was right about him. If Victor had waited, if he had listened, if he had treated mourning like mourning instead of opportunity, he might have kept some piece of what he wanted. But greed is impatient, and impatience in families like mine is just confession with better clothes. He moved first. That was his mistake. I just made sure the record was ready when he did.